The holographic display cast blue shadows across Evan's weathered face as he studied the tactical readout of Outpost 17. His fingers drummed a steady rhythm against the briefing table, the sound echoing in the cramped confines of the Iron Talon's command center. Around him, 23 mercenaries from 6 different species watched with the practiced attention of professionals who'd seen too many battlefields to count. "Simple extraction," Evan began, his gravelly voice cutting through the ship's ambient hum. "Outpost 17 controls the Kepler Junction trade route. Ythar Dominion wants it cleaned out. We go in, neutralize resistance, secure the facility." His hazel eyes swept the room, noting the mix of eager grins and bored expressions. Standard rates, plus bonus for minimal structural damage. Kate shifted in her position near the tactical console, her green eyes fixed on the outpost's defensive layout. Something about the mission data felt wrong, too clean, too simple for a facility this strategically important. Her hands remained clasped behind her back, but her fingers flexed with growing unease. "Sir," she said, her voice carrying that steady precision that had made her invaluable over their 3 years together. "Intel shows civilian families in the lower levels, evacuation protocols." Evan's scar twitched slightly. He'd noticed that detail too, buried in the appendices of their briefing materials. "Dominion says they'll handle relocations post-operation." The Ythar sergeant, Kethvar by name, made a dismissive clicking sound with his claws against his weapon harness. "Humans breed fast, always more where those came from." His amber eyes glowed with mercenary pragmatism. "Credits don't care about feelings." Kate's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "These aren't just humans, Sergeant. They're Earthborn, first-generation colonists trying to build something out here." "Same difference," Kethvar growled. "Weak species playing at expansion." Evan's finger-tapping accelerated. He'd fought alongside humans before, respected their tenacity in ways that surprised him. But contracts were contracts, and his crew needed paying. "Questions later. We drop in 6 hours." As the briefing dispersed, Kate lingered, her athlete's posture coiled with tension. "Evan?" Her use of his name carried weight. She rarely broke protocol in front of the crew. "This feels wrong." He turned toward her, his stance angling slightly in that unconscious gesture of trust he reserved for her alone. "Wrong how?" "Outpost 17's been broadcasting humanitarian aid requests for months. Food shortages, medical supplies. These aren't military targets, they're refugees." Evan's hazel eyes studied her face, reading the conflict there. Kate's empathy was both her greatest strength and sometimes her heaviest burden. "Orders are clear. We take the outpost. We get paid. No debates." But even as he said it, his voice softened slightly. "Kate, I see it too. Doesn't change the job yet." The Iron Talon shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, the Kepler system's twin stars painting the viewports gold and crimson. Outpost 17 appeared on their screens, a collection of prefabricated modules clinging to an asteroid's surface like a metallic growth. It looked fragile, vulnerable. "Incoming transmission," announced their communications officer, a spider-like arachnid whose chittering accent made everything sound urgent. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human face, lined with stress but steady-eyed. Tousled brown hair fell across his forehead as he leaned into the camera pickup. "This is Captain Eric Reed, Outpost 17. We're tracking multiple vessels on approach. State your intentions." Evan stepped forward, his command presence filling the frame. "Captain Reed, you're harboring fugitives from Ythar Justice. Surrender your facility and we'll ensure safe passage for non-combatants." Reed's blue eyes didn't waver. He ran a hand through his already messy hair, a gesture that somehow conveyed both weariness and resolve. "We've got no fugitives here, just families trying to survive. You want to talk? Fine, but we don't kneel." The transmission cut. "Defiant," Kethvar commented with what might have been approval. "Stupid but defiant." Evan's fingers found their familiar rhythm against his thigh. Something in the human captain's voice reminded him of himself at that age, before cynicism had worn down his edges. "Launch assault shuttles. Standard deployment." As the mercenaries filed toward their dropships, Kate caught Evan's arm. Her grip was firm, her green eyes searching his face. "Once we start this, there's no taking it back." "There never is," he replied, but his scar twitched again. The Iron Talon's sensors suddenly screamed warnings. Point defense turrets hidden in the asteroid's surface opened fire, their beams lancing out with surprising accuracy. One of their escort fighters exploded in a brilliant fireball. "What the hell?" Evan barked, his strategic mind already recalculating. The intel had mentioned minimal defenses. Kate's fingers flew over her console, analyzing the defensive pattern. Improvised weapons, jury-rigged mining lasers converted to military use, clever. On the screen, Outpost 17 no longer looked fragile. Hidden weapon emplacements tracked their ships with precise coordination, while the facility's communications arrays crackled with encrypted signals. Whatever these humans were, they weren't the helpless refugees their intelligence had suggested. "Sir," Kate said quietly, her voice carrying new respect for their opponents, "I don't think this is going to be simple." Evan watched another defensive battery reveal itself, its improvised nature somehow more intimidating than military-grade weaponry. These people had built their defenses from nothing, turning desperation into ingenuity. His finger-tapping stopped entirely. The assault shuttle, Razor's Edge, bucked and weaved through the defensive fire, its pilot cursing in 3 languages as converted mining lasers painted the viewport with deadly light. Evan gripped his harness, studying the tactical display while his 20-person strike team prepared for landing. What should have been a routine insertion had become a gauntlet of improvised but effective defenses. 30 seconds to LZ'd, the pilot shouted over the din of impacts against their reinforced hull. Kate checked her sidearm one final time, her movements precise despite the shuttle's violent maneuvering. "Defensive positions are too coordinated for civilians," she called to Evan over the noise. "Someone down there knows military tactics." Evan nodded grimly. His hazel eyes tracked the incoming fire patterns on his display. "Scatter formation on touchdown. Watch for—" The shuttle slammed into the asteroid's surface with bone-jarring force, its landing struts finding purchase on the rocky terrain just as something exploded 50 meters to their left. Through the smoke and debris, Evan caught sight of their objective, Outpost 17's main airlock, sealed behind improvised barriers that looked like they'd been assembled from cargo containers and mining equipment. "Move!" The mercenaries poured from the shuttle, their mixed collection of species and combat gear spreading across the hostile landscape. Evan's boots crunched on the asteroid's surface as he took cover behind a jagged outcropping, his rifle tracking for targets. The outpost loomed ahead, its prefabricated modules connected by reinforced tunnels that looked far more defensible than their intelligence had suggested. A sharp crack echoed across the terrain, and Ythar stumbled, blue blood seeping from a furrow across his gray shoulder. "Sniper!" he snarled, diving behind the nearest cover. Kate's analytical mind was already working. Muzzle flash came from the communication array, 700 meters, elevated position. Her own rifle swung toward the target, but the shooter had already repositioned. "These humans adapt fast," Evan muttered, his scar beginning to twitch. Military doctrine said to advance under covering fire, but something about this felt wrong. The defenders weren't fighting like desperate civilians. They were fighting like people who'd had time to think, to plan. His suspicions proved correct when the ground beneath 2 of his mercenaries suddenly gave way. The improvised pitfall trap dropped them 6 feet into a jagged hole lined with salvaged metal spikes. Not lethal, surprisingly, but effective at removing combatants from the field. "Medical," one of the fallen mercenaries called out, more embarrassed than injured. Kate was already moving, her athletic grace carrying her toward the trapped soldiers while she kept one eye on potential sniper positions. As she knelt to assess their injuries, her sharp green eyes caught something that made her pause. The trap's construction showed careful planning, designed to disable rather than kill, with precisely calculated angles to avoid major arteries. "Evan," she called, her voice carrying new realization, "they're not trying to kill us." Before he could respond, the outpost's external speakers crackled to life. Captain Reed's voice carried across the battlefield, calm despite the chaos. "Mercenaries, this is your warning. We've got your entire approach mapped, and our next trap won't be so gentle. Turn around while you still can." Ythar's amber eyes blazed with frustrated pride. "Humans think they can bluff us?" He started to rise from cover, but Evan's hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Wait!" Evan's tactical mind was processing what he'd seen. The defensive positions were too well coordinated, the traps too precisely constructed for a desperate last stand. These humans had been preparing for this confrontation, and they'd done it with whatever materials they could scavenge from their civilian operation. Kate pattern analysis on their defensive fire. She was already on it, her fingers flying over her portable tactical computer. Coordinated suppression, but they're deliberately avoiding kill shots. Ammunition conservation mixed with psychological warfare. A new sound reached their ears, laughter, carried on the thin atmosphere by the Outpost speakers. Human laughter, relaxed and confident, coming from people who should have been terrified. It was the sound of defenders who believed they could win. Evan's finger-tapping resumed against his rifle stock. In 30 years of mercenary work, he'd learned to read battlefields like other people read books. This one was telling him a story he didn't like. Fall back to secondary positions. Regroup and reassess. "Sir," Kethvar's hunched posture radiated confusion, "we outgunned them 5-1. Numbers don't mean much if you're walking into someone else's trap." Evan's hazel eyes swept the terrain ahead, noting how perfectly positioned every piece of cover was for the defenders, how each approach would funnel attackers into predetermined kill zones. These humans have been busy. As his team withdrew to regroup, Evan caught sight of movement in the outpost's observation windows. Human faces watching their retreat not with relief, but with something that looked disturbingly like approval, as if they were impressed by his tactical decision. Kate appeared at his elbow, her expression troubled. "Sir, I've been analyzing their trap construction. The materials, the engineering approaches, they're not military." "Meaning?" "These are civilian engineers and miners who've taught themselves warfare, and they're doing it better than most professional soldiers I've seen." Her green eyes met his. What kind of people turn desperation into this level of tactical innovation? Evan didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on Outpost 17, where humans who should have been helpless refugees had just fought his veteran mercenaries to a standstill using nothing but ingenuity and determination. His scar twitched as an uncomfortable realization began to form. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure his side deserved to win. The improvised medical bay in the captured mining crawler smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. Kate knelt beside the wounded human prisoner, her hands steady as she cleaned the plasma burn across his shoulder. He was young, maybe 25, with the lean build of someone who'd spent his life in variable gravity. His brown eyes watched her with surprising calm for someone who'd been fighting for his life an hour ago. "Why aren't you afraid?" Kate asked quietly, her green eyes studying his face for tells. In her experience, prisoners were either defiant or terrified. This one seemed almost curious. "Should I be?" The prisoner's accent carried the slight drawl of outer colony worlds, but his voice was steady. "You patched me up instead of leaving me to bleed. Doesn't seem like you're the killing type." Kate's hands paused in their work. Professional interrogation said to maintain distance, but something about his straightforward manner made that difficult. "Your friends nearly took out 3 of my people with their traps." Nearly being the key phrase. A slight smile crossed his weathered features. "If Eric, Captain Reed, wanted your people dead, they'd be dead. He's trying to make a point." "What point?" "That we're worth more alive than dead, that this rock we're clinging to is worth defending." The prisoner winced as Kate applied a fresh bandage, but continued talking. "Name's Tommy Bell, by the way, mining engineer, trap designer, and apparently prisoner of war." Kate found herself responding to his informal manner despite herself. "Kate, tactical officer." "Officer in what army?" The question was asked casually, but Kate heard the intelligence behind it. This civilian engineer was probing for information while seeming to make small talk. "Mercenary company." "Ah," Tommy's expression grew thoughtful. "So you're not Ythar military. That's interesting." Before Kate could ask what he meant, the crawler's comm system crackled. Evan's voice carried the tension of a commander dealing with unexpected complications. "Kate, report to command section, now." She secured the prisoner's restraints and made her way forward, finding Evan hunched over the tactical display. His fingers drummed their familiar rhythm against the console edge while he stared at intelligence reports that clearly weren't matching reality. "Status," she asked. "Dominion Overseer Velsith wants a progress report." Evan's scar twitched as he spoke the Ythar's name. Apparently, our simple extraction should have been completed hours ago. Kate studied the tactical overlay showing Outpost 17's defensive positions. The humans had used the brief respite to reinforce their barriers and probably lay more traps. "Sir, I've been talking to the prisoner. These people aren't just refugees. They're organized, motivated, and led by someone with real tactical sense. Civilian leadership. That's just it. I don't think Captain Reed is civilian. The way he coordinated that defense, the precision of their trap placement, this has military fingerprints all over it." Evan's finger-tapping stopped. "Background?" "Working on it, but the prisoner, Tommy Bell, let something slip. Asked what army we were part of, seemed relieved when I said mercenary rather than Ythar military. Why would that matter to them?" Kate's green eyes met his. "Maybe because they know something about the Dominion that we don't." Before Evan could respond, their communications array chimed with an incoming priority transmission. The screen filled with the angular features of Overseer Velsith, her pale Ythar eyes unblinking as she regarded them with barely contained impatience. "Commander Evan." Her voice carried that clipped precision that made every word sound like a criticism. "Progress is inadequate. The humans still resist." "Resistance has been more organized than intelligence suggested," Evan replied carefully. "We're adapting tactics accordingly. Adaptation is unnecessary. Overwhelm them. Use maximum force." Kate felt her jaw tighten. Maximum force against civilian refugees went against every principle she'd tried to maintain in their mercenary work. "Overseer, there are families in that facility, non-combatants." Velsith's cold gaze shifted to Kate with the attention a predator might give prey. "Non-combatants are an outdated concept. All humans in this sector are potential insurgents. Remove them." The transmission ended abruptly. Evan stared at the blank screen, his weathered face troubled. Kate could see the conflict playing out behind his hazel eyes, the professional mercenary warring with something deeper, more human. "Sir," she said quietly, "there's something else. The prisoner mentioned that if Captain Reed wanted our people dead, they'd be dead. These humans are deliberately showing restraint. Professional courtesy? More than that, I think they're trying to prove they're not the enemy here." Evan's scar twitched again. "Then who is?" Their answer came sooner than expected. The Outpost's communication array activated, broadcasting on an open channel that reached every ship in the mercenary fleet. Captain Reed's image appeared on their screens, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a collection of faces, men, women, even children, all human, all watching the camera with that same quiet determination Kate had seen in their prisoner. "Mercenaries," Reed began, his blue eyes steady. "I know you're just doing a job, but I need you to understand what's really happening here." He stepped aside, revealing a tactical display showing shipping routes, trade agreements, and population statistics. "Outpost 17 isn't just a way station. We're the coordination point for humanitarian aid to 6 colony worlds, food shipments, medical supplies, refugee processing. The Dominion doesn't want to control us. They want to eliminate us." Kate felt her breath catch. The strategic implications were staggering. "Evan—" "I see it." His voice was grim. Reed continued, his calm voice carrying across space to the mercenary fleet. "They hired you to be the weapon, but they didn't tell you what you'd be destroying. These families behind me? They've got nowhere else to go. This facility? It's the lifeline for thousands of people who never hurt anyone." The transmission ended, leaving Evan and Kate staring at a tactical picture that suddenly looked very different. They weren't conducting a military operation, they were enabling genocide. Kate's hands were clasped behind her back, but her fingers flexed with growing anger. "He's right, isn't he, about what we're really doing here?" Evan's finger-tapping resumed faster now, betraying the depth of his internal conflict. "Orders are orders, Kate." "Are they, when the orders involve murdering refugees?" For a long moment, the command section fell silent except for the ambient sounds of the crawler's systems. Finally, Evan spoke, his gravelly voice carrying new weight. Get me a secure channel to the Iron Talon. It's time we found out what the Dominion isn't telling us. The encrypted data packet materialized on Kate's screen like a digital cancer, its contents growing more horrifying with each decoded line. She'd been running surveillance intercepts on Dominion communications for the past 2 hours, her analytical mind piecing together fragments of conversations that painted a picture no mercenary should ever see. Evan. Her voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite suppress. You need to look at this. He crossed the command center in 3 quick strides, his hazel eyes scanning the decrypted intelligence. What he read made his weathered face go stone cold. The Dominion's plan wasn't just about taking Outpost 17, it was about erasing it entirely, along with every human soul inside. Complete sterilization, he read aloud, his gravelly voice barely above a whisper. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence of prior habitation. They're not hiring us to take a facility, Kate. They're using us as cover for a massacre. Kate's green eyes blazed with controlled fury. There's more. Operation Clearcut, systematic elimination of human settlements along the trade routes. Outpost 17 is just the beginning. The tactical display updated automatically, showing the scope of the Dominion's larger strategy. Dozens of human settlements marked for sterilization, their populations listed as obstacles to efficient resource extraction. Men, women, children, all reduced to numbers on a bureaucratic death warrant. Evan's scar twitched violently as the implications crashed over him. How long have they been planning this? 2 years minimum. The mercenary contracts were always meant to provide plausible deniability, regrettable casualties during lawful military operations. Kate's voice turned bitter. We're not just hired guns, Evan, we're patsies, scapegoats for genocide. The command center's comm array chimed with an incoming priority message. Overseer Velsith's angular features filled the main screen, her pale eyes holding that cold satisfaction of someone whose plans were proceeding perfectly. Commander Evan, time grows short. Accelerate your timeline. Evan forced his expression into professional neutrality, though his fingers had begun their nervous drumming against his thigh. Resistance remained significant. Another 12 hours would... 12 hours is unacceptable. Velsith's voice carried new menace. You have 3 hours to breach their defenses. After that, we implement Protocol 7. Kate felt ice form in her stomach. Protocol 7 meant orbital bombardment, total destruction of the target area with no possibility of survival. Overseer, Evan said carefully, orbital strikes might damage the facility's infrastructure. Infrastructure is irrelevant. The humans must be eliminated, all of them. Velsith leaned forward, her alien features sharp with predatory focus. Your contract specifies completion of objectives, Commander. Complete them or face termination of contract and crew. The transmission ended. Kate stared at the blank screen, her analytical mind processing the threat's implications. Termination of contract in Dominion parlance didn't mean loss of payment. It meant elimination of witnesses. They're going to kill us too. Once we've served our purpose. Evan's hazel eyes were hard as flint. Professional liability elimination. Can't have mercenaries spreading inconvenient truths about Dominion methods. The weight of their situation settled over them like a gravity well. They were trapped between completing a genocide or facing execution themselves. But as Kate watched her commander's face, she saw something she'd rarely witnessed in their 3 years together, Evan's moral compass finally overwhelming his professional cynicism. Sir, she said quietly, there might be another option. I'm listening. The humans. They're not our enemies. They're potential allies. They've been trying to avoid killing us because they know we're not the real threat. Evan's finger-tapping stopped entirely as he considered the tactical implications. A joint operation against the Dominion would be suicide. They outgun us 10-1. In open space, yes, but here, on their prepared ground, with their knowledge of the terrain? Kate pulled up the tactical analysis of the morning's engagement. These humans turned mining equipment into military-grade defenses overnight. Given real weapons and coordination with our forces, it's still a long shot. Better than the alternative. Kate's voice carried quiet conviction. At least we'd die fighting for something decent instead of enabling mass murder. Evan stared at the tactical display, his strategic mind weighing impossible odds against moral imperatives. Around them, the command center hummed with the familiar sounds of military equipment, but the atmosphere had changed. They were no longer planning an assault, they were contemplating revolution. "The crew won't all follow us," he said finally. "Ythar and his loyalists are mercenaries first. They'll see this as breach of contract." "Some will. Others might surprise you." Kate's green eyes met his. "But even if it's just us, at least we'll know we chose right." The comm system activated again, but this time it was an internal channel. Tommy Bell's voice crackled through the speakers, transmitted from the medical bay where he remained under guard. "Hey, Officer Kate, your prisoner here has something to say." Kate exchanged glances with Evan before activating the response channel. "Go ahead, Bell. Eric is monitoring your communications. Encryption's not as secure as you think." There was a pause, then Tommy's voice returned, warmer somehow. "He wants you to know that the offer's still open. We're not your enemies, and we know you're not ours. Real enemies are on their way in 3 hours." Evan stepped forward, his command presence filling his voice. "This is Commander Evan. What are you proposing?" Captain Reed's voice replaced Tommy's on the channel, calm and professional. "Alliance, Commander. Your people and mine against the real threat. We provide local knowledge and defensive positions. You provide firepower and military expertise. And after, assuming we survive, after you're welcome to stay, leave, or help us warn the other colonies. But first, we all need to live through the next few hours." Kate watched Evan's face as he weighed the decision. She could see the exact moment when the hardened mercenary made his choice, not based on profit or contract obligation, but on simple human decency. "Captain Reed," Evan said, his gravely voice carrying new resolve, "let's talk terms." The command bunker fell silent, except for the ambient hum of life support systems. Evan stood before his assembled mercenaries, his weathered face bearing the weight of a decision that would define them all. 23 beings from 6 different species watched him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. Behind him, the tactical display showed Outpost 17's defensive positions, no longer as targets, but as potential sanctuary. "Orders have changed," Evan began, his gravelly voice carrying across the bunker with quiet authority. "We're standing down the assault." Ythar's amber eyes blazed with disbelief. His stocky frame uncoiled from its characteristic hunch as he stepped forward, claws tapping against his weapon harness. "Sir, the contract—" The contract was a lie. Evan's hazel eyes swept the room, meeting each mercenary's gaze in turn. "The Dominion didn't hire us to take a facility, they hired us to enable genocide." Kate activated the holographic display, revealing the intercepted communications and operational plans. As the scope of Operation Clearcut became clear, dozens of colonies marked for sterilization, thousands of civilian casualties, several mercenaries shifted uncomfortably. Others, veterans who'd seen too much to be easily shocked, simply nodded with grim understanding. "Genocide pays well," commented Zrix, a serpentine Nagari whose species had no particular love for humans. "What's your point, Commander?" "My point," Evan replied, his finger tapping resuming against his thigh, "is that we're expendable. Once the job's done, Protocol 7 eliminates witnesses, all witnesses." That got their attention. Professional mercenaries could stomach many things, but planned betrayal by employers struck at the core of their business model. Ythar's claws stopped their nervous tapping. "You're certain?" Kate stepped forward, her analytical mind presenting the evidence with clinical precision. "Termination of contract and crew in the context of Dominion operational security. It's standard practice for sensitive operations." "So we complete the job and die anyway," muttered their explosives expert, a cybernetically enhanced human named Eric 7. "Or we refuse and die immediately, some choice." "There is a third option." Evan's voice carried new steel. "We ally with the humans, use their defensive knowledge combined with our firepower to survive the orbital bombardment. Then we make the Dominion pay for their deception." The bunker erupted in arguments, voices raised in 6 different languages, expressing everything from outrage to incredulity. Through it all, Evan stood firm, his command presence holding the chaos together by force of personality alone. You want us to fight our employers? Kethvar's tone balanced between respect and disbelief. For humans? I want us to survive, Evan replied, and the humans offer our best chance at that. Sir, interrupted their communications officer, her chittering accent making her nervousness obvious. Incoming transmission from Overseer Velsith. The main display flickered to life, revealing the Ythar official's sharp features. Her pale eyes surveyed the assembled mercenaries with cold calculation. Commander Evan, your assault timeline has been inconsistent. Perhaps motivation is lacking? Evan stepped forward, his scarred face a mask of professional composure. Overseer, we've encountered complications. Human defensive capabilities exceed intelligence estimates. Irrelevant. You have 2 hours before Protocol 7 implementation. Complete your objectives or face immediate contract termination. Kate watched the screen with growing anger, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. The casual way Velsith discussed mass murder made her stomach turn. What about civilian evacuation? Velsith's attention shifted to Kate with predatory focus. There will be no evacuations, no survivors, no complications. Her voice carried the finality of a death sentence. Complete your mission or we complete it for you. The transmission ended. In the resulting silence, Evan could hear the weight of decision settling over his crew. Some, like Eric Seven and their medic Dr. Voss, were nodding with grim acceptance of their situation. Others, particularly the alien mercenaries who felt no kinship with humans, looked ready to mutiny. I won't be part of genocide, Dr. Voss said quietly. The elderly human had served as their medic for 5 years, patching up wounds without ever asking about the conflicts that caused them. If that means fighting our own employers, so be it. Agreed, added Eric Seven. I've done questionable things for money, but not this. Kethvar's hunched posture radiated internal conflict. Commander, my people have no love for humans, but betrayal by employers. He trailed off, his military conditioning warring with species loyalty. I'm not asking anyone to love humans, Evan replied. I'm asking you to hate being manipulated, to refuse being used as tools for someone else's atrocities. The debate might have continued, but their proximity alarms suddenly activated. On the tactical display, 3 Dominion cruisers had entered the system, their weapons arrays already charging for bombardment. Time's up, Kate announced, her voice carrying new urgency. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide now. Evan looked around the bunker one final time, seeing his reflection in 23 different faces. Some showed loyalty, others calculation, still others fear. But all of them were his responsibility. Anyone who wants to attempt surrender to the Dominion is free to leave now, he said quietly. I won't stop you, and I won't judge you. But I'm staying. I'm fighting alongside the humans, and I'm making Velsith pay for trying to use us as expendable pawns. The silence stretched for eternal seconds. Then Dr. Voss stepped forward. I'm with you, Commander. Eric Seven nodded. Same here. One by one, 15 of the 23 mercenaries moved to stand with Evan. 8 remained clustered around Kethvar, their expressions torn between loyalty and survival instinct. Sergeant, Evan said, his voice carrying no reproach, what's your decision? Kethvar stared at the tactical display for a long moment, his amber eyes tracking the approaching Dominion ships. When he finally spoke, his gravely voice carried grudging respect. Ythar don't like humans, but Ythar hate betrayal more. His claws scraped against his weapon as he stepped forward. We fight. Kate felt something unlock in her chest. Pride, relief, and determination mixing into something that felt like hope. They were about to attempt the impossible, but at least they'd do it together. Captain Reed, Evan called into the comm system. This is Commander Evan. We're requesting permission to join your defense, all of us. The response came immediately, warm with human emotion that surprised several of the alien mercenaries. Permission granted, Commander. Welcome to the Resistance. The main airlock of Outpost 17 cycled open with a mechanical wheeze that somehow sounded welcoming. Kate stepped through first, her athletic frame tense with professional wariness, despite the diplomatic nature of their mission. Behind her, Evan moved with the controlled precision of a career soldier entering potentially hostile territory, though his stance showed none of the aggression their earlier assault had carried. Captain Eric Reed waited in the reception area, flanked by 3 other humans whose bearings suggested military training despite their civilian clothes. The space itself told a story. Improvised armor plating welded over civilian bulkheads, weapon ports jury-rigged into walls that had once been purely functional. Everything spoke of people who'd had to learn warfare by necessity. Commander Evan, Officer Kate. Reed's blue eyes were steady as he offered his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thank you for coming. I know this wasn't an easy decision. Evan accepted the handshake, noting the calluses that spoke of hands-on leadership. Captain, your people fought well today. Professional respect where it's earned. Kate found herself studying the humans more carefully than their intelligence briefings had suggested necessary. Reed's easy confidence, the way his people positioned themselves to cover approaches without seeming threatening, these weren't refugees playing at resistance. These were people who genuinely mastered the art of defensive warfare. Tommy mentioned you'd been monitoring our communications, Kate said. How long have you known about the Dominion's real objectives? Reed's expression grew grim. 3 weeks. We intercepted preliminary orders for Operation Clearcut. He gestured toward a wall display showing shipping routes and settlement patterns. Your species isn't the only one with intelligence networks. When you're fighting for survival, you learn to gather information however you can. The tactical implications hit Kate immediately. You've been preparing for this specifically. The defensive positions, the trap layouts, all designed with mercenary capabilities in mind, yes. Reed ran his hand through his tousled hair, the gesture carrying both stress and determination. We knew you were professionals, probably good at your jobs, but we also hoped you were human enough to recognize genocide when you saw it. Evan's scar twitched at the word human, not from offense but from recognition of its deeper meaning. You were betting our consciences would override our contracts. It was our only chance. Reed's voice, though weary, held the conviction of a man who had bet everything on a desperate gamble. It was our only chance, Commander. We hoped you'd see the truth before it was too late. Evan's nod was almost imperceptible, but it was there. A silent acknowledgement of the human captain's desperate hope. The air in the reception area crackled with a new kind of tension, no longer hostile, but heavy with the weight of impending battle. The distant thrum of the approaching Dominion cruisers was growing louder, a low, predatory hum that vibrated through the asteroid itself. "All right, Captain Reed," Evans said, his voice cutting through the silence, his gravelly tone now devoid of any lingering cynicism. "Let's make sure that gamble pays off. What's your plan for an orbital bombardment?" Reed's face, though still lined with stress, broke into a faint, relieved smile. "We've been preparing. Our primary defense isn't direct interception, it's evasion and misdirection. We've identified several deep vein mining tunnels that lead to natural caverns within the asteroid. They're too small for direct bombardment, and the rock density will absorb most of the shock waves." He gestured to a holographic schematic of the outpost and the asteroid. "We've reinforced the access points and set up emergency life support in the largest caverns. It's not comfortable, but it's survivable." Kate's analytical mind immediately began processing the data. "And the Dominion cruisers? They won't just sit there while we hide." "Precisely," Reed affirmed. "That's where your firepower comes in. We've got a network of improvised point defense turrets, mostly converted mining lasers, but they're positioned for maximum coverage. They're designed to harass, to make their targeting difficult, to force them to expend more energy than they'd like. But they won't stop a sustained bombardment. We need your ship, Commander. The Iron Talon is our only chance at fighting back in space." Evan considered this. The Iron Talon was a mercenary transport, not a warship, but it was heavily armed for its class and its shields were robust. We can provide covering fire, draw their attention, but we're outmatched. "Not entirely," Reed countered, a glint in his eye. "We've been broadcasting a distress signal on a loop, encrypted to look like a standard colony plea for aid. It's a long shot, but if any independent patrols or sympathetic traders are in range, they might investigate." Kethvar, who had entered the airlock with the rest of Evan's loyalists, grunted, "A bluff? Against the Dominion?" "Hope, Sergeant," Reed corrected, his gaze steady. Sometimes hope is all you have left. Evan clapped Reed on the shoulder. Hope and a few dozen enraged mercenaries. All right, Captain, let's coordinate. Kate, get back to the Iron Talon. You're running tactical. Kethvar, you and your squad are with Captain Reed's engineers. You'll be reinforcing the tunnel entrances and setting up defensive strong points within the caverns. Eric 7, Dr. Voss, you're with me. We'll be leading the ground defense, coordinating with Captain Reed's militia. As the mercenaries dispersed, the atmosphere in Outpost 17 transformed from a tense waiting game to a furious scramble. Humans and aliens, former adversaries, now worked side by side with a shared purpose. Tommy Bell, released from the medical bay and now sporting a fresh bandage, was already barking orders to his engineering teams, pointing out weak points in the improvised defenses that needed shoring up. "Commander Evan," Tommy called out, a grin on his face. "Glad to see you chose the right side." Evan offered a rare, grim smile. "Let's hope it's the winning side, Bell." On the Iron Talon, Kate was a whirlwind of controlled energy. She barked orders at the Arachnid communications officer, rerouting power to the shield generators and weapon systems. Full power to forward shields, prepare for evasive maneuvers, target their weapon arrays, not their engines. We want to disable, not destroy if possible. We need to buy time. The Iron Talon shuddered as the first Dominion cruiser opened fire, its energy beams lancing across the void. The shields flared, absorbing the impact, but the ship groaned under the strain. "Return fire!" Kate commanded, her voice calm despite the rising tension. The Iron Talon's heavy lasers spat crimson bolts, striking the lead cruiser's shields. Below, on the asteroid, Evan, Eric 7, and Dr. Voss moved through the labyrinthine tunnels, coordinating with Captain Reed and his militia. The humans, armed with a mix of salvaged mining tools, converted energy cutters, and a few antique projectile weapons, were surprisingly disciplined. They moved with a quiet efficiency born of desperation and intimate knowledge of their home. "They're focusing fire on the main airlock," Reed shouted, pointing to a flickering monitor displaying external sensor readings. "That's where they'll try to breach first." "Eric 7, prep the charges," Evan ordered. "Dr. Voss, get your med kit ready. This is going to get messy." The ground trembled as the Dominion cruisers intensified their bombardment. Rock dust sifted down from the ceiling and the groan of stressed metal filled the air. Suddenly, the main airlock buckled, then exploded inwards, sending a shower of debris into the tunnel. Dominion assault troops, heavily armored and armed with plasma rifles, poured through the breach. They were larger, more imposing than the Ythar mercenaries, their movements precise and ruthless. "Hold the line!" Reed roared, his antique rifle spitting a volley of kinetic rounds. The battle was brutal. The Dominion troops were well trained, but they were fighting on the humans' home turf. Every corner was a potential ambush, every tunnel entrance a choke point. Eric 7's expertly placed demolition charges collapsed sections of the tunnel, funneling the enemy into kill zones where Reed's militia, guided by Evan's tactical commands, unleashed a surprisingly effective volley of fire. Dr. Voss moved through the chaos with a quiet determination, patching up wounds, both human and alien, with practiced ease. He was a medic, not a fighter, but his presence was a calming influence amidst the storm. Kethvar and his Ythar mercenaries, initially hesitant, fought with a ferocity that surprised even Evan. They might not have liked humans, but they understood betrayal, and the Dominion had betrayed them. Their heavy weapons tore through the Dominion armor, and their disciplined fire covered the human militia's flanks. "They're trying to flank us through the ventilation shafts," Tommy Bell yelled, pointing to a schematic. "We booby-trapped those." Evan grinned. "Let them come." The battle raged for what felt like an eternity. The Dominion, confident in their superior numbers and technology, were slowly being ground down by the ingenious traps and fierce resistance of the defenders. On the Iron Talon, Kate continued her desperate dance with the cruisers, her ship taking hit after hit, its shields flickering precariously. "Incoming message," the Arachnid comms officer chittered, his multiple eyes wide. "Unidentified vessel, not Dominion." Kate's heart leaped. "Put it on screen!" A sleek, independent patrol vessel bearing the insignia of the Free Traders Alliance appeared on the main view screen. Its weapons arrays were already charging. "This is Captain Rylan of the Wanderer. A gruff voice boomed over the comms. "We picked up a distress signal. Looks like you're in trouble, Iron Talon, and it looks like the Dominion is up to their old tricks." The Wanderer opened fire, its heavy plasma cannons tearing into the shields of one of the Dominion cruisers, forcing it to break off its attack on the Iron Talon. The tide of the space battle began to turn. Below, on the asteroid, the Dominion ground forces, now cut off from orbital support and facing relentless resistance, began to falter. Their disciplined advance broke into a desperate retreat. "They're falling back!" Reed shouted, a triumphant roar in his voice. Evan watched as the last of the Dominion troops scrambled back through the shattered airlock, leaving behind a trail of plasma burns and defeated armor. "Don't pursue! Let them go!" The battle was won, for now. Days later, the Iron Talon floated peacefully alongside Outpost 17, undergoing repairs. The Free Traders Alliance had arrived in force, their ships forming a protective cordon around the asteroid. The Dominion, taken by surprise and facing unexpected resistance, had retreated, but everyone knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Inside Outpost 17, the atmosphere was one of cautious celebration. Humans and mercenaries mingled, sharing stories of the battle, a newfound respect forged in the crucible of shared survival. Evan stood with Captain Reed, watching Tommy Bell and Eric Seven excitedly discuss new trap designs. "You really did bet everything on us, didn't you?" Evan mused. Reed nodded. "We had to. We knew the Dominion wouldn't stop, and we knew we couldn't fight them alone. You mercenaries, you have a reputation for being ruthless, but also for being pragmatic. We gambled on the pragmatism." Kate joined them, a rare relaxed smile on her face, and it paid off. The Free Traders are already spreading the word about Operation Clearcut. The Dominion's actions here are going to expose their entire genocidal campaign. "It's a start," Evan said, looking out at the stars, "but it's not over. The Dominion won't forget this." Kethvar approached them, his amber eyes still wary, but with a new glint of respect. "Commander, my people, we've decided we're staying for now. This resistance has better pay than working for liars." Evan clapped him on the shoulder. "Good to have you, Sergeant." Dr. Voss, ever the calm presence, was setting up a makeshift clinic, tending to the last of the wounded. "Remarkable," he murmured to Kate. "Humans and Ythar working together. Who would have thought?" "Desperation is a powerful motivator, Doctor," Kate replied, but her smile lingered. The alliance forged in desperation had become something more. Outpost 17, once a target, was now a symbol, a beacon of resistance against tyranny. The mercenaries, once instruments of destruction, had found a new purpose, fighting not for credits, but for something far more valuable, their own survival, and the survival of those they had once been hired to destroy. Evan, the hardened mercenary, looked at Kate, then at Reed, and finally at the bustling outpost, a place where humans and aliens were building a future together. His scar, usually a symbol of past battles and hardened cynicism, now felt like a mark of a new beginning. The universe was vast and dangerous, but for the first time in a long time, Evan felt like he was on the right side of it. The contract was broken, but a new, unwritten one had begun, binding them all in a fight for a future where humanity and all who stood with them could truly be free. The Iron Talon would no longer be a mercenary ship, but a vessel of hope, carrying the fight for freedom across the stars.